How to explain the lack of videos of late?
Yeah, I'm a lazy sack of shit, but I have legitimately been busy with various editing gigs, most recently doing a video for this guy, so all I can do is apologise. But I digress, let's see what the guys over at Eidos Montreal have been up to. This is Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
I once thought I could save the world. Now look at it.
Now, quick disclaimer before I begin, as I feel I should address those who haven't played this game's predecessor, 2011's Human Revolution, because I feel a few of you might be wondering if you can play the sequel without playing the prequel first.
And the answer to that is yes, though if you are interested in playing Mankind Divided, I would highly recommend checking out Human Revolution regardless.
It's a pretty damn good game despite its pretty dated graphics, which were dated even when it came out, but you can pick it up for like a $5 these days, so there's not much to lose. What I'm here to do today is to let you know if Mankind Divided is worth, well, 6 times the cost of its 5-year-old counterpart. So without further ado, let's set the scene and take a look at the story. Now, Mankind Divided takes place about 2 years after the events of Human Revolution and sees our returning hero, Adam Jensen, working with an anti-terror group to take down a band of augmented baddies.
Though trust me, the plot is immensely more complicated than that.
There's a pro-org society who may or may not be behind recent attacks. There's a hacker group Jensen is in league with that want to uncover the truth behind shady organisations. There's a mystery surrounding recent augmented upgrades Jensen received. There's the bloody Illuminati who are pulling strings and have planted agents everywhere.
And all of this does unfortunately make the game very exposition heavy.
It's the same problem shows like CSI have, I think. Because Jensen works for an investigative organisation, you'll find that 90% of the game's dialogue is just people discussing what's going on and what they're gonna do next. I mean, don't get me wrong, the cast have backstories and most have some sense of character,
but there needed to be more of it.
Jensen himself I do think is really cool, but he's just so emotionless. He never cracks a smile, he never gets angry or upset, he rarely says anything funny or interesting, and that's pretty much the same for all the characters. There's just not much for players to latch onto, which makes it difficult to really care about anyone. The story itself doesn't offer much either. It's sometimes kinda hard to follow, what with the sheer amount of names and organisations to remember. The main antagonist of the game is about as generic as they come, so there's no interest there. And nothing unexpected ever really happens, outside of maybe a character death towards the end, but the character that snuffs it had like zero charisma or personality to them, so I ended up not caring. Now, granted, the plot in Mankind Divided is serviceable. I mean, it moves the game on nicely enough, but I think I realised how underwhelming the plot of the main game was when I played through the side missions.
And I don't think I've ever seen this before in a video game, but I think I became more interested in the plots of some of the optional missions than I did the mandatory ones.
I mean, just to give some examples, there's a side mission where you team up with a document forger to help out those in need, where you have to deal with a shady cop who's extorting innocent people. That was quite memorable. There's one where you have to find out what happened to an undercover Interpol agent, where I made the decision to have Adam pose as him to find out what was going on. That was cool. But the one in particular that I remember being quite interesting was one that featured a woman that you find out had been implanted with the memories of a dead serial killer,
and that she had been murdering people without knowing it. I think that plot is interesting enough for a game on its own. Though as surprisingly good the side missions are, there is one annoying quirk to them.
And that's how you can easily miss some. When you fly off to another location to do a mission and then return, the time of day changes, and whenever that happens, all side missions reset to new ones, so any you didn't do will be gone.
And that would be all fine and well, but a few of these missions can only be activated once you talk with some random NPC on the world map, and there's a few of those, so yeah, they're easily missed.
And for those who are thinking you can just do them later,
you can't.
This is one of those games that once you've beaten it, you can't go back into the world to finish off what you didn't do.
Why couldn't there be a post-game mode?
Put us back into Prague after the credits, and if we want to change the time of day to access other side missions, all we'd have to do is sleep in Jensen's bed to pass the time. How hard could that have been a program?
Okay, so underwhelming story aside, let's now talk presentation. And one thing I loved here was the overall vibe of the game's setting.
Prague is a lot of fun to explore with cool architecture, vibrant nighttime environments, and an overall grand ambiance to get soaked up in.
Granted, I wish Eidos had taken a more rockstar approach to their world.
I mean, the world looks good, but it could have felt more alive. Like, you'll recognise NPCs which never move from their respective spot, the same goddamn news story plays on TVs constantly, and outside of the game's missions, there's nothing to do other than raid buildings for items.
I would have liked to have seen more activities.
Like, why not let us play a card game with people on the street and gamble some credits? Why not have an arcade machine or two, or maybe some parkour challenges perhaps?
But that is less criticism, more me spurting ideas.
Just know that regardless of various world-absorbing exclusions, Prague is still a fun, cool place to explore.
But whilst Eidos have nailed down the environments, the character models are, not good.
There's clearly no mocap work here outside of the few cutscenes, as most of the dialogue responses are handled by a series of programmed animations that I quickly began to recognise.
For example, here's a few of Jensen's.
Okay, so that there is a common one where Adam stretches his arms out with his eyebrows down. Here he is gesturing with his left hand. Here's some examples of him gesturing his head to the left. Here he is nodding left, then forward. It's a very Knights of the Old Republic approach to dialogue animation.
Which is understandable, given the enormous amount of dialogue here, but it still doesn't look good.
Characters often lose eye contact with Jensen and they just seem to waddle on whilst looking into blank space.
It's kinda like if I delivered my review like this without ever looking into the camera. It's a tad bizarre, isn't it?
Lip syncing is pretty off too, and the models of some of the more minor characters are like something you'd see on an early PS3 game.
Oh, and there's many a technical issue present in Mankind Divided.
Whether it be NPCs clipping with their environments, the music being too loud and burying the game's dialogue so you can barely hear it.
How secure your communications, Bob? Jaina seems to have eyes everywhere these days.
And the countless amount of times where movable objects just glitch like crazy.
So considering that the game doesn't look all that good, and that the last game I reviewed looked better in every way with no performance hiccups, we can at least assume Mankind Divided is rock solid performance-wise, right? Right? Wrong! You know, that's not nearly as scary when he's that
Wrong!
It's bad, people. Mankind Divided is rife with constant frame rate drops. The game crashed on me about 5 times during my playthrough, and that's not including a section in a shooting range, which I couldn't for the life of me get done without it booting to the Xbox home screen.
I honestly have never played a console game that has crashed this much on me.
Oh, and a load times. Honestly, this is my biggest gripe in Mankind Divided. Now, because this is a stealth-heavy game with a quick save feature, I saved a lot so that if I accidentally got caught, I could just reload the save. But it takes forever for you to get back into the game, and that flow of enjoyment you have when playing is just totally interrupted.
In fact, the load times are so long and frequent that I always made sure I had my phone by me just so I had something to do when waiting. Many RPGs were caught during the load times of this game, I can tell you.
Now, know that I was playing this game on Xbox One, but for what gameplay I've seen of the PC version, well, it looks a lot better. And I'm assuming load times are better too if you're rocking an SSD, so heed my advice here.
If you have a PC capable of running Mankind Divided, use it. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but crappy PC ports are a thing, remember? So the story is poor and the presentation is all in all unprofessional. So can the gameplay make up? Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this type of game because what Mankind Divided excels in regards player choice. So for example, the mission might be to infiltrate a bank.
So, how do you go about it?
Do you walk in the front door guns blazing, or do you take a more stealthy approach? Maybe you could uncover a vent to bypass the guards. You might decide to hack your way through security doors. Maybe there's a wall you can bust through. Or what about taking out an NPC and stealing their keycard?
I just love this non-invasive style of play, where you're free to go about an objective how you want.
This is honestly something the Call of Duty franchise could benefit so much from. There's no hand-holding here and you're free to do what you want, whenever you want. That being said, the game does reward you more if you play stealthily and non-lethally, as this will net you extra experience. It's a little unfortunate that you're not rewarded as much if you play more aggressively, and this is where a Infamous-like morality system could come in handy, where if you go down a more evil path, that would unlock perks you couldn't get if you played like a good guy, and this could open up different endings in the game, and the choices you make could hold more weight. It would also improve replayability.
Because the option to play as a more evil Jensen makes sense, as it's odd when you see him murdering about a dozen or so people whilst he's in the process of solving another murder.
Also, when playing stealthily, you'll notice how few combat sections there are. There was only about 2 instances where I felt the need to get my guns out. More combat-only sections would have been nice, as it would give stealth players a bit more variety.
But regardless, the game's objectives and levels are exciting as hell to play through, and it's all complemented by the excellent controls.
Now granted, the control layout takes some getting used to.
I mean, whoever thought of making L3 the button to take cover?
But there is the option to change the layout to something more standard, so yeah, no problem there.
Anywho, Jensen is a joy to make use of.
One feature I especially loved in this game was the cover system. Much like Human Revolution, the camera switches to third person whenever Jensen takes cover, but this time you can switch between various cover points with a simple tap of a button, and a line is shown for you so you know exactly where Jensen will go. This makes stealth gameplay very seamless, and it allowed me to focus on getting my timing right to take out guards, as opposed to getting annoyed with a sticky cover system.
Honestly, this is the best cover system I've ever seen in a first-person shooter, and I'd love to see other FPSs adopt it.
Then there's Jensen's augmentations and the abilities they bestow him, and he has so freaking many of the things, it's honestly impossible to make full use of them all in one playthrough. And whilst I won't call his abilities original, I mean there's many a mechanic lifted from other games, but they are lifted for a reason, cause they're very fun to pull off. Whether you're moving across the map with the very Dishonored-esque Icarus dash, or clearing a room of enemies with Jensen's Typhoon ability, or jumping off a multi-story building and landing like it was nothing courtesy of the Icarus landing,
it all adds up to an immensely good time.
And the leveling up system ensures that new augmentations are unlocked at a healthy pace so that the gameplay never gets stale.
Though there is one augmentation that I feel is a major letdown, and that is the social enhancer.
As once you've unlocked it, Jensen can give various responses to NPCs to persuade them to do something that will benefit the player. And he apparently does this by releasing pheromones artificially produced from auxiliary steroids and vaginal aliphatic acids? The fuck?
And when Jensen makes full use of this substance, which I am now morbidly curious as to how he got it,
you're given 3 responses and you have to pick the appropriate one based on what sort of character you're dealing with.
Now a few of you might be thinking, that sounds good.
Sort of L.A. Noire inspired perhaps, and the only way to figure out the correct response is to pay close attention to the sort of person you're dealing with, read their body language and respond appropriately.
But nope.
Remember, the facial animations in this game suck, so instead, all you have to do is pay close attention to the top left of the screen. Your 3 responses are given the symbols Alpha, Beta and Omega respectively, and if you want to succeed in the conversation, all you have to do is choose the option that flashes the most times.
Wow. Way to insult our intelligence there, Eidos. That's like something you'd see in some preschool educational program for 3-year-olds.
Hola, soy Dora, and today we're going to be counting how many times the symbols flash in Deus Ex Mankind Divided. If you can't work this one out, eres un idiota.
Yeah, what is this game rated again?
Peggy 18.
But whilst most of the augmentations are cool, more of the game's issues creep in when you look at the items you can use. Now, they all work well. Shooting is tight and responsive, grenades show a very handy arc when you throw them.
The items themselves are fine, but there's 3 problems.
Now, the second problem regards inventory management, as you'll use a very Resident Evil-like grid to lay out your weapons. But much like games like Skyrim, I was always running out of room to carry things.
Yeah, quick rant incoming. Why is this still a thing in games?
Nobody likes limited inventory space, it's bullshit. Remember in the original Pokemon games when you could only carry 20 items with you at a time? So if you found a new item, you had to make your way back to a Pokemon Center to make room, and then move all the way back again so you could finally pick it up.
I think all old school Pokemon players will agree with me when I say that was annoying as fuck. Look, when I got to get items in video games, I don't want to have to spend my precious time on planet Earth deciding if I need that can of virtual beer or not. Just give me it!
And I wouldn't make such a fuss over this, but I found that there are new items to pick up in this game everywhere. Every new room you enter is something useful to pick up. It's a big part of Mankind Divided, and thanks to the limited inventory space, I had to either drop items or sell them on a regular basis to make room.
Now, the majority of the time, I sold them, but this leads to my third problem. There's nothing to buy!
Pretty much the only thing I ever wanted was Praxis kits, which allowed Jensen to upgrade his augmentations. But the merchants only stocked so many of these. As a result, I had tens of thousands of unspent credits, and I was just constantly waiting for new merchants to show up so I could spend some of it. But they either didn't have the much needed Praxis kits, or they stocked items I already had. About the only thing I ever bought outside of Praxis kits were security nodes to help out with hacking. I mean, weapons and ammunition were useless to me as I was playing stealthily, and I couldn't afford to keep them with me as guns took up so much inventory space.
So yeah, not a good system, but regardless of the campaign's flaws, it's still very entertaining to play. And there's a lot of it.
I spent about 40 hours on the campaign, which for a first-person shooter with comparatively light RPG elements is very respectable.
It's just a shame that the game doesn't exactly leave you with a good taste in your mouth after you've beaten it.
As whilst the ending is not nearly as bad as the Order 1886, it has the same issues. It's pretty abrupt, leaving a lot of threads left hanging, and the game ends up feeling incomplete because of it.
I've started to notice more games doing this of late, where they have more sequel-baity endings.
Now granted, I'd love to play a sequel to Mankind Divided, but in the same manner of the latest Mortal Kombat game,
why would you sequel bait in a game when its sequel is probably at least half a decade away? By then I won't care.
I mean, with movies it makes more sense to use cliffhangers, as a 2-hour flick is a lot easier to rewatch than a 30+ hour game is to replay. Plus movies are made a lot quicker than games are too, so there's that as well.
So yeah, crappy ending aside, I will still say that you certainly get your money's worth with this game.
Now, unfortunately, there is a £25 season pass, and they've even stooped so low to include microtransactions. But I do feel I've spent enough time with this game, so I'm not gonna bother with them.
And neither should you.
I hear the items the season pass unlocks can only be used once.
In one playthrough. That is so wrong.
And the microtransactions are just not needed unless you want the game to feel cheaper by unlocking more upgrades at the start. Ergo, you're effectively paying to cheat.
I just don't understand why anyone would do this, but clearly people do, otherwise they wouldn't include the option. Now there is actually one other thing you can do outside of the campaign, and that's a surprisingly extensive online mode called Breach.
Here you take the role of an avatar in a virtual network, and you're tasked with acquiring data from towers, all while avoiding and taking down AI as you do in the main game. And you gain experience to unlock new orgs, some of which aren't in the main game, like a double jump ability. And the overall goal here is to get high scores, beat each stage with the required points, and you get more items and experience. And Breach has a really cool aesthetic too, kinda like the game's super hot. I think a lot of players will really like this.
Me personally, I wasn't too bothered, as after a 40-hour campaign, I had my fair share of this game.
Also, there is the little problem of the timer.
Yeah, you're timed. In a stealth game. Doesn't that go completely against the genre?
Stealth games are all about taking your time, finding vantage points, waiting for the right moment to move. I get that Breach is all about high scores, but your score should be judged by how effectively you take down enemies, not by how fast you do it.
I mean, you can take a more combat-centric approach, but come on people, if you want to rush through a level and shoot everything that moves, what the hell are you playing a Deus Ex game for?
Regardless of this fuck up though, Breach is still a good mode though, so if it seems like your sort of thing, then see it as a good way to extend this game's shelf life even further.
So all in all, Deus Ex Mankind Divided is recommended if you liked Human Revolution. But it could have been so much better, which is why I'm going to give the game a 7 out of 10.
I understand why you may find that harsh, but it is mostly the technical problems that are holding it back from an 8. So if the PC version is superior in that regard,
Feel free to up my score a point if that is your platform of choice.
I am still excited to see where this franchise goes, as I feel with more powerful hardware and a more sophisticated graphics engine, Deus Ex could truly impress.
I can imagine the PS5 coming out and a new Deus Ex game gonna be a launch title to show off the graphical capabilities of that system. That'd be awesome.
But regarding Mankind Divided, I'd say it's far from a turd, but it is rather unpolished. But if you can get past the game's presentational issues, and if you're not the kind of gamer that requires a compelling story,
It comes recommended. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching, and I want to take this time and give a couple thank yous. First of which goes to the incomparable Brizzy Voices for voicing Dora in that little skit you saw earlier. Brizzy's a super talented impressionist, and her channel is one of my all-time favourites on YouTube, so if you aren't subscribed to her already, do so. Also, I want to rectify something I should have done in my episode 1 review and give a shout out to Ilnedge, Joey Tedesco and Cubix Fails for agreeing to appear in my little hoedown. Links to their channels are in the description too. All 3 of them are immensely talented and their sub numbers are criminally lower than they should be, so definitely check them out too if you have the time. The Star Wars Episode 2 review is still in the works. Apologies over how long that one is taking. It hopefully should be up in the following weeks though. Thank you all once again, and I shall see you in the next review. Peace out.